trust, you have no monetary system. The monetary system is simply based on trust. It has nothing else backing it, and we're going to get into why in a minute. But our monetary system, your money is just based on trust. It's simply based on the fact that if I have this money in my pocket and I come to your store, you will allow me to exchange this money for your goods. Just trust. It's not based on anything else, because we didn't really come to that conclusion, but this really has no value. It has no value unless we give it value. Right? It's currency, it's not money. We're going to get into what money is. This is just currency. It has no real value unless we give it value. Belief in government. One of the fundamental principles of a monetary system is you must believe in who backs the system. You must believe in who backs the system. If you come here and I pray for you, you're going to walk out with an implied belief based on what you believe in me. That was how Jesus did all his miracles. People came because they had faith in him. They left with faith in him, and implied faith in him is what caused their healing. Your faith has made you whole. Our faith in government is what funds our monetary, is what fuels our monetary system. The minute the community loses faith in government, your monetary system begins to fail. It's one of the reasons, not all of them, but one of them. Without this belief, there can be no monetary system. Literally, your worship, and worship is an interesting word. There's two contexts of worship in the Greek. There is the worship that you give unto God, and then there's the worship, it's called proskyneu worship in the Greek. Proskyneu is to worship something but not to deify it. So when some people talk about, when we see in scripture how they worshiped Jesus, they say, oh no, they weren't worshiping him like a god. They were proskyneu, worshiping him as a person of authority or a king. So you can proskyneu something, you can worship it, according to the Greek context of the word, without deifying it as God, but you can put it pretty high. You can demigod it almost. So this is why this context that has in the Bible, you ever heard this? The love of money is what? The root of all evil. Sometimes they say money is the root of all evil.
It's the attitude towards the money.
It's the attitude toward, thank you. It's the attitude towards the money. So it's the love of money. It is the adoration of putting money in a position where you worship it, where you think the money has value. That's the root of evil. That is a universal principle that we're going to hopefully see tonight. When you put money in a position to think that money is what's giving you blessing, you have now stepped into the universe root of evil. Because that will fuel everything that you do from henceforth. Currency exists not by nature, but by law. It's not my quote, that's somebody else's. Currency exists not by nature, but by law. Law turns paper into currency. Law turns wood into currency. Law turns stones into currency. Not by nature, but by law. And your worship is required to make it work. Anything that causes the bearer to trust that the resource or value will carry the same worth and power to acquire similar values of exchange. This is now we're getting into what money is. Money is anything that causes you to think that time will pass and this thing will continually keep its worth generationally. That's what money is. So that's why we're going to talk about some things. We got a few here. I'm going to talk about these four. Maybe I'll get into more. 4 types of hard currency. I'm going to go from the bottom up. Mechanisms of war is money. Explain that to me. Do you agree? Let's have a conversation.
What is that?
What is the mechanisms of war? Does anybody have an idea? What do I mean by that? What is the mechanisms of war, or the mechanisms of violence, it can be called also?
A weapon of mass destruction.
Part of it. The mechanisms of war, the mechanisms of violence, is to have an army or a military that is able to carry out your will or your bidding. An army can, actually, what are the 3 ways I can get gold? My country doesn't have any gold, right? America, North America, actually America, the United States of America, has very little gold resources in the country. Very, very little. They had a little gold rush in the Yukon and California, but it doesn't really have a lot of gold in this country compared to other countries. So what are the 3 ways I can get gold? Number 1, I can buy it. Number 2,
Steal it?
so they can give it to me, right?
Yeah.
And number 3, yes, I can take it. I can just take it. I can walk into somebody else's country and say, thank you, this is mine. You can't do anything about it. How would I do that? With an army. With an army. I don't need any resources in my country. I don't need water. I don't need food. I don't need anything. If I have an army that can walk into your country and take it.
And no conscience.
Conscience is irrelevant right now. Talking about money. Monetas. That which has value that is transgenerational. My army can take your stuff today. My army can take your stuff tomorrow. My army can come and take your stuff next year. A strong military is monetas. It carries value that allows me to get resources.
Not steal, and then you come to my country and steal my stuff.
We declare war on countries and then we take people's lives. Don't we do that? And we think it's okay. World War I, World War II, the Korean War, the Vietnamese War, the Falkland War. Harper just invaded Syria. Nobody's dancing around saying, oh my gosh, the Canadian military is killing people. Because you know why they're in Syria? Let me tell you. Oh, it's not on this. Number 5, oil is money. That's why they're in Syria. That's why Saddam Hussein is dead. That's why they're in Iraq. That's why they're in Kuwait. Because that's another hard currency. Oil is a hard currency. Those who have oil have monetas. That's why Saudi Arabia is rich. So the mechanisms of war is monetas. Resources, anything that causes the bearer to trust that the resource of value will carry the same worth and power to acquire similar values of exchange. My war machine can take it, therefore it's mine. My war machine can take it, therefore I can have it. Monetas. So why does some of the most richest countries in the world also have the most powerful military? Because they understand the power of the mechanisms of war. The mechanisms of war is part of the monetary system. Without mechanisms of war in your monetary system, in capitalism especially, it can't exist. Let's go up the left. Labor is monetas. What do I mean by that? Manpower, right? What kind of manpower?
Physical work.
Right. More than that. Yes, physical work, but what kind of manpower? Slave power. Slave power. Because an army, you have to pay them money. We're going to get into that later on. Napoleon, he had to pay his army, especially in the Battle of Wellington, he had to pay his army gold. They had to be paid in gold. We're going to talk about how the banking cartels have become powerful using the mechanisms of war. That's how they become powerful. But labor is not like the mechanisms of war. If I have to pay a soldier, that's one resource. But if I have a free working slave, That's a completely different resource. Right? If I have a team of slaves that are working for free, the power of that labor is monetas. It is the ability to make sure that I can acquire value in the future. If I have a team of slaves and I need somebody to make shoes, do I have to pay for shoes? No. Slaves that go, they can make them out of cattle, they take the cattle, if I have to create cotton, do I have to pay for the cotton? A couple of seeds, I grow the cotton. But no, I have an industry of labor based on the labor system that I'm operating. Slaves. There's another side of that labor system is the working class. The working class, a strong working class, is monetas. The baby boomer generation, the reason it exists is because somebody said, listen, America requires a very strong labor force. The labor force fueled the Industrial Revolution. The labor force is what was conscripted to be in their army. One of the most powerful military forces on the planet came from a strong middle class, a strong working class populace. So a strong working class is monetas. That's why China at this time can create things cheaper than everybody else. Tell me why. Why is China able to make things cheaper than everybody else?
Cheaper labor.
Cheaper labor. A guy in Mexico is collecting, I don't know, $4 an hour. A guy in China is collecting $4 a week. And the unionized workers in North America, they want $30 an hour. If you own a company, where are you going to put it?
China.
Put it in China. Cheap labor. The cost of production goes way down. My profit margin goes way up. Isn't that good business?
Yes.
You evil capitalist. You're stealing jobs out of North America. You're creating sweatshops and making people work for nothing. You're socialist. That's what they call you. Communist. This is the concepts of wealth. Silver is monetas. America for years wanted to put America on the silver standard. Great story about silver. When the conquistadors went and discovered, I think it's on another slide, I might be jumping ahead, but when they went down and discovered the Aztecs